Hello and welcome to Where It All Comes Together. Here is my final product for Ms. Jane Foster Valkyrie. Had an absolute blast making her. Probably one of the most fun times I've had making an actual figure, and who would have thought, after all the hours of debating, trying to figure out which figure I was going to do for this year, I couldn't be happier with A, the character, and B, the process of how everything kind of came about. So without further ado, here is Jane in my review. So as you can see, I put her on a stand so she can be easily posed with her wings, kind of give her that whole effect of flying. She does not stand. Tried every which way I could with the wings. She is more top heavy than Dolly Parton and football pads, but I managed to dig through some of my old boxes of toys and found this stand. The wings are detachable, and they are not put in with a peg or anything. I sculpted the entire back so you actually cannot see where the magnets are, but on here you can kind of actually see the round little magnets there. So one on each side to really give it, a good stick to her when they have them on, because the wings are quite heavy. I cast them, molded and casted out of a set I had, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. I did just a couple little flaws with one of the two-part molds on the right wing here, but the left one turned out pretty good. Or if you're looking at it the other way, vice versa. So the way it works, pretty simple. You just basically click the wings up in and they hook to the back. That way when you remove them, you don't see any holes or any pegs or anything in the actual figure. This is the sculpted expression that I did. Basically took the mold of the Elektra from the Daredevil Netflix series, dremelled it down, resculpted, and after a lot of heartache and resculpting and sanding, I think I got it to a point where she actually looks like she's angry and screaming. So I had a ton of fun making the hair. The hair is strictly made from green stuff. So when I made my mold for the figure, I actually molded it without any hair. Basically just pretty much the beginnings of what would be the hair ultimately, and then sculpted from there accordingly. As you'll see the other two alternate heads that I've made here in a minute, all the hair goes in different directions. So basically what I had to do was wrap it around something and leave it to dry. That's how I got the effect of it basically just staying the way it was. And then afterwards, you see the braids in there. I'm pretty happy with how those turned out. Once it dried, I was actually able to come through and sculpt in the small little extra pieces of hair. She was made from the Medusa base figure. All of the armor was sculpted, the belt was sculpted, the leggings, not the leggings, the leg armor, and the wraps around those sculpted as well. I'd used epoxy for the actual parts that would be metal, green stuff with actually a little bit of red and black dye in it to kind of give it that brown effect without actually having to paint those. So once they sculpted and dried, they were actually good to go. The cape was made from a fodder part that I had left over from an Angela figure. It was sculpted with green stuff, as well as the gold armor here and up top as well. Epoxy for the armor on the chest, which was a painstaking process. I was trying to get each and every one of those square, not only square, but also going around, three-dimensional shapes was quite hard. They actually did not turn out the best on the sides, but thankfully I faked it a little bit with some paint, so it turned out pretty good. The armor over the shoulders was made with Procreate. Needed it to be a little bit flexible because the arms obviously moving and everything, so it's got a little bit of give to it if the arms move without any paint rub actually going on there. All three heads, once again, were molded and cast. The original armor that I made for her headpiece, was actually made from epoxy. And then the beautiful thing about that is once you mold and cast, and you actually have that cast, if there's any kind of impurities in your sculpt or in the actual figure itself, they can easily be sanded down now that it's all one piece, opposed to just basically painting or trying to sculpt over your original figurehead. So The lightning effect was made from basically hot glue. You can see there's kind of a part that wraps around the wrist. So if you actually remove the hand, the lightning effect can come with it. So it's not a permanent thing. It can be added as need be whenever you want to display her a certain way. And then hand will pop right back in. And there we go. So ultimately, 2 weapons I made for her. I cast a handle from a Harley Quinn mallet, and then actually used actual chain from a necklace that I got at Hobby Lobby, and super glued it in the position it was, kind of the same technique I did with the hair, put it over a couple things I had that were round and let it dry, and then once it dried, basically airbrushed it. So I didn't want to do any kind of wash or dry brush on the weapons. I kind of wanted them to have the pure gold look to them. So if you can see comparatively to her head armor and then the armor on the chest as well, the weapons are just pure gold without a wash. So kind of going for more or less kind of a magical effect with those, and hopefully they would stand out, being that they weren't anything but basically monochromatic with the gold. Also sculpted her other weapon here. Weapon is a little bit loose in the hand, as you can see, doesn't quite fit, but ultimately different positions, you know, it can be, you know, just fine without it falling out. Airbrushed the cape as well as most of the figure. I did all of the painting minus the base coat of the flesh with a brush as well, and then as I had certain parts of it covered up, it was basically clear coat post put on accordingly. So we have a flat clear coat over all of the skin and then the hair as well, and basically used a gloss coat over everything else. So as you can see, what needs to shine shines, and what does not does not. That was at least the goal anyway. Hopefully you all see that, and that's what I was going for. So with that, I will move on to her alternate head. Come off and on pretty easy. Once again, with any kind of customized figures, I always recommend heating them up a little bit as you are, you know, taking things on and off. And I kind of preheated all this before I did the review. But moving on, we're going to her red-eyed look. Once again, don't know much about the comic, but this might be my favorite one, how it turned out and everything. I put a little bit of glow around the eyes with the red and tried to get a little bit up into the actual armor as well, but being that it was already painted and sealed, it didn't take paint that great. So with that, once again, different hairstyle. I just made this basically her simple braid. As you see, there's a little bit of a gap there left on purpose, so you can slip the wings behind it. But down goes the braid, and then that is what we have there. All right. Go ahead and show you the last head, which is just our basic normal pose, and use this one. Actually had sculpted it to fit kind of around the body, so it basically lies with the curvature of her body. And this was the only one that I really had to do a lot of detail in the eyes, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. Eyes are tough. Obviously, I'm kind of a shaky person anyway, so it's a little bit harder for me to get that detail, but I'm getting better and better at it as I've gone along. I kind of look at her eyes comparatively to, you know, Ellie that I did about 2 years ago for Secret Santa, and leaps and bounds better. So quite happy with how that turned out. But once again, there's a braid, and I did, as I mentioned, did airbrush the hair, but then I did a wet wash with black and then dry brush with just the same color brown that I used for the underpainting to basically get that effect of the hair and everything, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. So as you all had mentioned, I had mentioned, I should say, and you all had seen in the previous videos, I added a special gift. What might that gift be? Oh, there he is. Hi, Bame. How are you today? Got no response. It's because I'm talking to a plastic toy. But anyway, here is extra little something that I got for my recipient. Wanted to do this pretty much about halfway through. I realized I had this horse. I saw some pictures as I was doing more research on Jane and had seen pictures of her with, you know, the Pegasus-like horse with wings and everything. So basically went through the exact same process with this one. Mind you, the wings are not actually glued on at the moment because of shipping purposes. So I'm going to ask my recipient that they actually glue this part in once it is shipped. But I'm going to kind of turn Bame sideways. I know it's not his name. I should have probably looked up his name, but it's more fun to call him that. So basically just a Lord of the Rings horse that I sanded down, removed the armor, airbrushed, and then put back on some of the armor, some of the saddle and everything, and resculpted what was there. So the same exact mold and that I used to do her wings for the horse as well. And once again, they have the magnet holding the top part on, so it can basically move as need be. And it still has its awesome kicking action without any paint rub, which is nice. You push this nice little button on the horse's ass, and voila, we have a marching horse. So with this, I really wanted to do a cloth cape for her. It just didn't work out that way, time restraints, and I'm trying to figure out how to pull that off. Would have been ideal for actually placing her on the horse, because with the plastic one and the way I had to use the green stuff to kind of finish the cape up onto her body, it doesn't sit on there like I had really hoped. So basically, once again, really in need of to kind of warm her up before we actually place her completely on the horse. But you can kind of see and get an idea of kind of how this works. So she's able to get on the horse, and we can do this without messing it up here. And he has the reins as well. She didn't have both of her weapons, but ultimately feel like she can be displayed on the horse, or she'll able to be displayed, you know, with the stand. Hopefully have her flying up above the horse, whatever the recipient likes. So basically, that is it. But once again, had a blast making her. I really hope that my recipient likes her as much as I had a good time making her. If you don't like her, I'll make sure that I put my return address nice and clear on the package, but I have a feeling that you might. So happy to see your reaction, and can't wait to see what I've gotten. So Merry Christmas to all. And as always, thank you so much for watching.